Hello, good morning. We are going to be starting the webinar, Finding the Right CRM Solution for Your Nonprofit, in about 5 minutes. Thank you. All right, good morning. We're just going to give another couple minutes and then we'll get started with the webinar. Okay, well, it is 12 noon Eastern on the dot here, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Let me just share my screen. And we will start our webinar. Okay, and this session is called Finding the Right CRM Solution for You. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for attending. I know whether it's your lunchtime or you're starting off your day, there's lots of ways you could be spending your time. So I do appreciate you taking the time to spend it here with us. A little bit about me. My name is Ruben Singh. I've been in the CRM space for about 20 years, and at least half of which in the nonprofit sector. I've been very, very fortunate to have worked with some of the most impactful nonprofits in the country. And I've learned a lot from my experiences, but the lesson I'd say that stands out the most is that it does not matter how amazing the technology is that you're working with. If the technology is not aligned with your nonprofit strategy, if the solution is not rolled out in a way that resonates with your staff and with your organizational culture, or if there's no clear link between the technology and the beneficiaries that you serve, then ultimately the technology is going to fail. And this is really why I started 1/10 Consulting, to not just implement CRM, but to work with nonprofits to ensure all facets are aligned in order to move their mission forward, whether it's people, process, technology, and all of which combined. We accomplish this through our services, as you can see below. But enough about me, enough about us, and let's turn to the topics here in our agenda. So again, this is called Finding the Right CRM Solution for You. I'd say that this webinar is intended for those who may be new to the CRM space. Perhaps you've reached your limits with what Excel or Google Suite can provide, or maybe you're using a donor management system, or you're looking to graduate to something more flexible. Or perhaps you're just looking to entirely overhaul your enterprise CRM. In whichever category you might fit in, I hope you'll find something useful in this session. Here's what our agenda looks like. We're first going to talk about CRM. What is it and what is the problem that we're trying to solve? What are the systems that are out there designed for nonprofits? And something I call the CRM Spectrum. So there's different sort of categories of CRM systems for nonprofits and pros and cons of each. And then we'll talk a little bit about things to consider in your selection process, as well as things to consider for your implementation. We also have a Q&A that we're going to do here. So I'd say we'll see how that plays out. But please do, whether we open up the lines or whether we just do it through Q&A on the chat. But I'd say please do put your questions in the chat, and I will periodically stop and take a look and do my best to answer those questions that you have in the chat. And then we'll also leave a little time at the end for that as well. All right, let's move on here. So with CRM, why CRM? What is the problem that we're trying to solve? And I'd say as a consultant, when I walk into nonprofits, the challenges they face sort of revolve around these types of things here. There's disparate databases, there's various systems, various spreadsheets. There might be one system out there for donors, another application for project management and task management. There might be another system for email management and email marketing, maybe a spreadsheet for volunteers, another system for advocacy, and events might be tracked somewhere else, and then a series of Post-it notes and things that are in people's heads. And as a result of this, there's not a lot of knowledge sharing. The most common thing I hear in organizations is we have no idea what's going on. So there's just this lack of sharing of knowledge across the organization. There's also no constituent history. When I pick up the phone and I call a donor, call a volunteer, I have no idea what all sort of activity has been involved prior to that conversation. I'm not clear who already reached out to them for a donor or who already reached out to them to speak at a particular gala. There's lack of institutional memory. We're not really sure. We have no history of the decisions we made, things that worked, things that didn't work, and we're reinventing the wheel each time as we go along. Also, having these many different systems lead to very tedious and very error-prone processes. You've probably seen it before where you have one constituent in two different systems. One of them mentions that, or one of them notes that they are deceased. So which do I believe? Is that an error? Do I run the risk of sending that letter out and embarrassing ourselves, or do we just not communicate with them anymore? So having many different systems to track information can cause problems. But the biggest problem is we can't really measure things. If everybody has their own way of doing things, their own spreadsheets, their own systems, their own applications, we have no real way to measure consistently and across the organization our impact and our success. So there's one article, and I like to mention this. It's one of the better articles I've read. It's called "Is Excel Making Your Nonprofit Mediocre?" It's by Curtis Chang. It's in the Stanford Social Innovation Review. And what I like about this article is Chang compares a grocery store with a restaurant kitchen. And by doing so, he is comparing a spreadsheet versus a CRM system. And so I'll just tell you a little bit about the comparison he makes. He says that a grocery store aisle and the shelves within a grocery store, they resemble spreadsheet columns in that each shelf contains a certain kind of thing. Aisle 17 always has cereals, just like column AC in a spreadsheet always has customer's donation date. So everything has its place and the underlying structure doesn't change. And the static nature of that spreadsheet makes it very easy to perform complex calculations, as you've all seen in Excel. But the drawback with spreadsheets, where it starts breaking down, is when something changes and you need to track it. So let's say, for example, you're pursuing a grant and it has its own life cycle, or you're taking a major donor prospect through a moves management cycle where someone starts as a prospect, then you cultivate that relationship, then they become a qualified prospect, and then perhaps after that, there may be a stewardship phase after the gift. In each process on that donor journey, there might be a different set of people that they engage with, different data to capture, different processes to support. So just like in a restaurant kitchen where things are quickly moving and changing, one dish may have several chefs and several processes in order to take a simple bowl of raw potatoes and turn it into an amazing side dish at a fine restaurant. So CRM is like the restaurant kitchen. So whereas the spreadsheet is static and individualized, CRM is very dynamic and collaborative. And I'd say in 100% of the nonprofits I've walked into, the aspiration is definitely to be more dynamic and collaborative. So the solution I'm suggesting is CRM, constituent relationship management. You will see reference to donor management systems out there. I shy away from that because I think, and I think it's frankly a term that's going to go away eventually, because when you think of nonprofits and foundations and such, it's really not just donors you're dealing with. There's a ecosystem of partners, of vendors, of volunteers, of other stakeholders. So I think constituent relationship management is a more common term and one I tend to lean on. And with this solution of CRM, what does it offer you? It gives you a centralized database for your organization, creates that institutional memory. It gives you a 360-degree view of the constituent. So I can look at any constituent's record and I can see when did he or she give, when did he or she volunteer, what events have they participated in, what mailings I've sent out. I have a full picture of that particular constituent. Your CRM system can also facilitate your marketing communications, whether that's digital communications or segmentation for your direct mail vendor. All that can be started from within the system. Another advantage of CRM is it implements best practices. So let's say you're a fairly small or new nonprofit and you don't really have a process for doing tributes or for soft credits or anything like that. Well, the CRM systems designed for nonprofits has a best practice in place. So you can leverage the functionality that's there and it becomes your process. Or let's say you have a very unique model for fundraising and you need to create a best practice. Well, that's a great way for you to build and configure that in the system. And now everybody is doing things the same way. And with everybody entering data now in the same way in a consistent manner, you're now able to get insights from the system, whether it's dashboards, whether it's reports. You can see the trends and patterns of your giving and your impact and really be able to make smart decisions from there on your programming. So these are some of which there are many advantages and reasons why people implement CRM. So what is out there? There's lots and lots of CRM systems that are out there in the market for nonprofits. I feel like every couple weeks I'm hearing about a new one that's out there. And so I'm going to try to help synthesize some of that data that's out there and help give you some ideas of what you might want to focus on. For every CRM system for nonprofits that I've seen out there, they all have this core functionality. So frankly, if you see this list of things, don't be too impressed. You want to look beyond this. Every CRM system should have the ability to add and track donations, the ability to send out acknowledgements, a way to track a donor's profile or a constituent's profile, some way to track interactions with that constituent, calls, meetings, notes, to-dos, that sort of thing, some ability to query and report on the database, some mail merging functionality, let's say for thank you notes or end of year thank yous, or end-of-year tax summaries, that sort of thing, and some form of integrated email mass communication tool. Just about every CRM that you're going to find in this space is going to have all these features. So it's really what happens beyond this list that's where you start differentiating one system over another. So let's take a look at some of those things that you might want to consider. So as you're looking for CRM, as you're looking to see what's the best fit for your nonprofit or foundation, you might want to ask yourself some of these questions. Do I care about householding? And this is, if I have two constituents who belong in the same household, do I have some way to link them together, to report on them as a household and not just individuals? Do I care about duplicate management? Do I want the system to proactively let me know if there's a potential duplicate in the system and have some way of reconciling them? Is the system more constituent management focused, or is it more donor management focused? Do I want to track volunteers and partners and vendors and other stakeholders? Do I want the ability to track relationships where one individual may be associated with another individual or might be associated with another organization, and be able to track those relationships together? And then gift management is a key area too. Every nonprofit I work with has different types of gifts that they support. So you have to ask yourself, what is it that we support both now and in the near term, long term, and does the system support it? Pledges, soft credits, matching gifts, tributes. Do I have hundreds of checks that I need somebody to enter in a quick way, and I can enter them in a quick entry batch? Do we support in-kind gifts? Do we need to split gifts across different revenue codes? Do we offer premiums where you might get a tote bag or a mug based on a certain gift amount? You want to think through all the things that's aligned with your fundraising strategy and make sure that the system that you implement has all those features and can support it. And then this is sort of a more advanced list of things that you want to consider. But again, questions to ask yourself as you're considering a CRM. Do we have a major gift cycle in which we want to track a donor going through the journey or a prospect going through the journey of major gifts? Do we have a clear moves management cycle that we like to take everybody through? Do we want to process gifts, actual credit cards, and have recurring gifts processed within the system? Event management, do we have galas or other fundraising events where we want to manage and track within the system? Volunteer management, online donation forms, peer-to-peer fundraising, social listening tools that goes out and sees where information might be tracked about your organization from, let's say, your Twitter handle, or where your donors might be speaking a little bit about your organization, as well as any third-party apps. These are the types of things that you want to look at and say, which of these things are important to us, and will the CRM that we're looking at support it? So there's what I call a CRM spectrum and the pros and cons of each as we go along the spectrum here. What I like to think of is that for all the CRM systems that I've worked with, there's some that fit more in a beginner category, some in an intermediate category, and others in an advanced category. And these are not hard and fast rules. You may look at some of my suggestions here and say, I wouldn't really consider that a beginner, or I really wouldn't consider that advanced. So this is just our perspective, but know that some of these categories are a little loose. In the beginner category, these tend to be systems that are a little bit more donor and fundraising focused. You won't see them get too much into volunteer management, event management, that sort of thing. They track gifts and transactions very well. It covers that core functionality list, but you don't really have the ability to configure or customize anything specific to your organization. Maybe a few fields, but that's it. And the pricing for these beginner systems are by contact limits. So it's $50 for 1,000 contacts in your system a month, or it might be $75 for 1,200 contacts. So the pricing is done by contact limits. In these intermediate systems, and I call these all-in-one solutions, you would see that the beginner solutions tend to have very basic functionality, but allow you to integrate with a finite number of apps. On the intermediate solutions, there tends to be less of that, and all the solutions are sort of built into one. The survey functionality, the form functionality, the email functionality is all built into one system. Everything's in one place. It's somewhat configurable, and also allows you to do some very basic automation. So, for example, if a donor makes a gift over $1,000, an email gets automatically sent to somebody. That's what I would call a workflow. So some of these all-in-one solutions now allow you the ability to do some of that automation as well. But the key difference here is these are all-in-one solutions. You don't need to go out and try to find a bunch of apps to what you're looking for. All the key features and functions that you need are within the system itself. Then the advanced category are more the open source systems, the open platform systems that allow you to configure and customize to your heart's content. It has typically a very broad user community and developer community, and usually has some sort of app marketplace that you can try out different apps to add on features to your system, switch it out over time, and really try to configure and customize the system specifically for what you need. And the pricing is not really done by contact limits for these types of systems. They're more done by seats. So the number of users, there's typically a monthly fee per user. So as you can see, as we go from left to right here on this spectrum, you have more control, but the costs tend to go up as you go from left to right there. So let's talk about some advantages and disadvantages. So think about that middle and far right category here. The all-in-one or the intermediate solutions that have a lot of functionality baked in, the advantage is it's a one-stop shop. You don't have to go shopping around for different features. Everything's in one place. There's one simple pricing model. You're not paying different subscription fees for different apps. You don't have to worry about compatibility. Does this email tool work with the CRM? Does this forms tool work with the CRM? What sort of problems might I run into? It's all fully integrated and compatible. It's very easy to use and intuitive, and typically ideal for organizations that don't have a very expansive IT shop, and doesn't necessarily require like a technical admin to maintain it. The open platform or more advanced systems, the pros to this are you can really select the features that you need. Let's say event management or volunteer management is not your thing. Well, just don't really implement those apps, or you can always add them on at a later time. You can also choose best-in-class apps. So you're not really stuck to whatever the system provides you. You can use an email marketing tool today, and then 3 months later, if a better one comes out on the market, you can add that one instead. These systems also tend to be highly configurable, highly customizable, and they can also support needs beyond just fundraising. Let's say you have a very unique fundraising model, or you have some programmatic stuff that you want to use the system for. Some of these open platform systems can be customized to support it. For example, I work with a nonprofit that that also does use a food truck to serve free meals in areas of need. And in addition to using their system to track volunteers and to track fundraising, they also use the system to track their events. So every time the truck goes out, how much was the cost for each of the meals? How many meals did we deliver? So not only is it covering fundraising and volunteer management, but it's also covering impact. So with some of these open platform systems, you can really customize it to go beyond just the basic needs and really make it specific to your nonprofit. So overall, these open platform systems give you, the nonprofit, more control. So let's talk about some of the systems that we've come across here at 1/10 that fit in each of these categories that we would recommend and why. In the beginner category, some of the systems, I would say that these are things that if you need to get up and running quickly, perhaps you've never used a CRM system before, you're currently on Excel, these two systems would work well for you, Little Green Light and DonorSnap. Little Green Light has all those basic core features that I talked about on that core functionality slide. Plus, it has a finite number of apps that you can integrate with, but all the essentials are there. Things like MailChimp or Constant Contact or FormStack, PayPal. So all those key things you need to be able to run a efficient nonprofit CRM is there. I would say that Little Green Light, no frills. The interface is very basic. It gives you very limited ability to configure or customize, but it does have all the essentials. It has a very intuitive user interface and a very, very active user community. So the smaller nonprofits I work with that use it, they swear by it. And for roughly $40 a month to support 2,500 contacts, it's pretty affordable. DonorSnap is another one I would put in this category. It, again, has all the essentials. It does have a little bit more built-in functionality as opposed to Little Green Light, so you don't have to integrate with too many third-party apps. But it does delve into online forms, event registration forms, and has a mobile app, and has direct integration with Constant Contact and QuickBooks. What I also like about DonorSnap is it does have a more intuitive user import tool. So if you're moving from one system to another or from spreadsheets, it gives you a little bit easier, more intuitive way to enter that data, to load that data in. And it's slightly higher priced than Little Green Light. For about $60, you can support it a month. You can support about 2,500 contacts. And this is sort of what a very simple interface of the dashboard looks like in little green light. Again, it has all the essentials. It has all the key roll-ups that you need, summarized information, but pretty simple interface though overall. As we move into the intermediate category, and this is a pretty wide range of systems here, I would start off with Bloomerang. And Bloomerang, I would say, has very strong and intuitive email and online capabilities. You can very easily set up an online form for donations or contact us or event registrations, and also has a very easy ability to segment your data to send out mass communications via email. Their focus, Bloomerang, is really on donor management and donor retention. They don't stray too far away from that. Very minimal volunteer and event management, very minimal ability to customize and configure. You can add a few fields, but that's not really their focus. They provide algorithms to be able to measure a constituent's engagement level. They audit your communications to ensure it's using very donor-centric language. They have a built-in social listening tool that can monitor what's being said about the organization on Twitter. And they recently implemented a donor engagement survey feature, which is pretty cool. So whereas some of these other CRM systems focus on breadth, I'd say Bloomerang really focuses on depth. Their focus is on donor retention and fundraising, and a very nice intuitive user interface. It's roughly around $200 a month to support 5,000 contacts. There's lots of different plans that I would encourage you to look at, but this is just a rough idea in comparison. Neon CRM is the other one that we often recommend in this area. It's another full-featured system, has probably more capabilities than Bloomerang because it does dabble a little bit in volunteer management, event management, and peer-to-peer fundraising, and also has some element of project and program management. It also, similar to Bloomerang, likes to keep the features in-house. So you don't have to integrate with too many third parties, and has a very similar pricing structure as Bloomerang. My only drawback there is the Neon CRM interface is a little outdated compared to Bloomerang, but thankfully it is something on Neon's roadmap to update, and they're actually in the process of updating that and going to be rolling out a new interface pretty soon. These other two systems that we're looking at here, Donor Perfect and ROI Solutions, I would say is more geared towards nonprofits that have a pretty involved direct mail program, so sending out letters for communication and fundraising. They have a lot more robust querying capabilities and mail coding capabilities as well. Donor Perfect in particular supports all types of giving, some of the more complex ones and unique ones, membership, capital campaigns, planned giving, endowments. What I also like about Donor Perfect is it does track multi-currency and conversion of dollars, so if you're taking in donations from other countries. But again, as I mentioned, I typically see Donor Perfect for organizations that have strong direct mail needs. ROI Solutions is a web-based application, but it is not cloud-based. And again, limited customizability, but it does allow you the ability to add fields and codes. But ROI Solutions, their bread and butter is really around gift management. They have very strong batch management control. So if you enter and manage gifts in batches, ROI Solutions is definitely a tool that you want to look at. It has very strong financial controls and integrates really well with accounting systems. But again, they don't venture too far off from that. They're really focused on nonprofit fundraising and marketing. Another unique element of ROI Solutions is it does have a data services offering, which covers everything from database maintenance, data analysis, data appends, NCOA, again, things that you would typically see for a nonprofit that is very heavy on the direct mail side of things. So if that's your area of focus, definitely something to consider. And moving on to our advanced category, before I do that, here's just a quick example of what a Neon CRM dashboard looks like on the top left. And on the bottom right is a donor profile of a Bloomerang interface. And when we get to the advanced systems that are more open platform, open source, I would say that the leader right there in our recommendations is Salesforce and Salesforce's Nonprofit Success Pack. Salesforce, as most of you probably know, is the innovative CRM platform that's hundreds of industries globally are using across nonprofits, for-profits, governments, so on and so forth. And since it is a platform, Salesforce has built the Nonprofit Success Pack as an application that sits on top of the platform to give it a nonprofit look and feel. one of the key differences with Salesforce's Nonprofit Success Pack is it's where many of the other organizations that we talked about has product management organizations that make decisions on behalf of the product and what direction it should go, what features it should include. Salesforce, however, is largely driven by the community. So there's hundreds of thousands of users who give feedback on various forums, workshops, conferences, development days, and they contribute ideas to Salesforce on the product roadmap. So when I put this up on the screen, some of you may have had mixed feelings. Some people, I would say, love working with Salesforce, and some people absolutely hate it. And in my experience, I would say that I've seen it fail miserably, and I've also seen it completely transform organizations for the better. The one thing to note here is that Salesforce, through its Power of Us program, does offer 10 free licenses to registered 501c3 nonprofits. You would just have to fill out an application for it. And that really encourages people to go this direction of Salesforce. The only challenge with that is I say it's a little misleading, because some folks assume that because these licenses are free, you just simply flip the switch on Salesforce and it starts working. And that's not really the case. It also leads people to think that, well, if it's free licenses, I'm going to save money with Salesforce. That's also not the case. By the time you have added on a few apps and you have spent a little money getting the system configured and customized and the data migrated over, the total cost of ownership is not much different than the other systems that we saw, or maybe more so. But the advantages of Salesforce, it really has all the nonprofit essentials covered. It has a very robust gift management side, but the real advantage is you can take advantage of the App Exchange, which is just a marketplace of apps that you can add to your system for any function that you can imagine, whether it's more advanced reporting, whether it's surveys, whether it's wealth management tools, email marketing. There's just a tremendous amount of apps you can take advantage of on the App Exchange, and also its customizability. So as I was mentioning before, beyond fundraising, beyond volunteer management, beyond all the key core features, it really allows you to customize it to do anything you want. If you want to go further into your program management or your project management or any other aspect to track your impact, you can really use Salesforce and customize it to meet the specific needs of your organization. The key thing here to remember is you really have to have the right expectations. You want to invest some time up front. You're probably going to need some expertise up front to help guide you on the Salesforce path, and perhaps an ongoing resource in an admin role. If you're a larger organization, I definitely recommend you hire a full-time admin. If you're maybe a smaller or medium-sized nonprofit, you may be able to make do with an admin who's maybe in a part-time role, or at least somebody who's dedicated to manage the system. And so those are our quick summaries. Again, there's so many systems out there, but these are some of the key things that we do recommend. I'm going to take a quick pause here and just see if there's any questions that have come from what we've been talking about so far. So just give me one moment, and we will take a look at the chat. All right. And at this point, I don't see anything, so I will continue with where we were. Oh, sorry, I do see one here. Do you think it is required to implement CRM, whether, do you think an external vendor is required to implement CRM, whether beginner, intermediate, or advanced? Do you think implementation requires an internal team to get set up? That's a great question. It really depends. I'd say that some of the more beginner systems do not necessarily need an external vendor to implement. In fact, some of them don't even offer those services. So Bloomerang, for example, really tries to give you a lot of the tools, and Neon CRM tries to give you the tools up front, and the documentation, so you don't really have to have an external vendor implement the system for you. Now, the only exception I would say is for data migrations. That's where you might need a little help, because understanding the back end of the database is a little tricky. So whereas I don't think you always need an external vendor to help you set up the system, I would say that you do need an internal team to help you get set up, because there's a lot of decisions that you want to make internally. What do we want to track? What features do we want to use? What business process do we need to put in place? What training needs to happen? So these are all the types of things that you definitely want an internal team to help set up, regardless of whether you need an external vendor or a consultant to help you implement. There was another question about an application not being cloud-based. I think ROI Solutions was the only one mentioned. So what I mean there is that this is a hosted solution. It is not, the data does not belong in the cloud, where, let's say Salesforce, for example, is cloud-based. It is, has servers that are shared across many organizations. It's a, and really, it could even be shared across different organizations, but the information is secured. So one organization cannot see one system to another. But it's allowed for shared resources, whereas hosted sites are really maintained by the organization. So ROI Solutions maintains it in what they call a private cloud. So they have a little bit more control over it. So that's a slight difference, but every one of the other systems that I talked about are cloud-based. There are some questions here about, do I have examples of why CRM implementations fail? If it's okay, I'm going to come back to that, because I do have a slide that does speak to some things that you need to be prepared for. And really, if you don't follow some of those things, that's why I've seen things fail. So if that's okay, I will come back to that. There's a final question here saying here, for data migration, what all things do we need to consider? This also will be coming up in my recommendations here for data migrations and things you want to consider before you implement. But I would say a key thing that you want to do is really understand your data. You want to work on some level of deduplication and cleansing before you get too far into the system, into an implementation. And then you want to make sure that the volumes that you are working with can be supported by your CRM. So excellent questions. I'm going to actually move on, because again, some of these points that are brought up are going to be covered in these next few slides. But by all means, if it's not covered, then please do mention in the chat, and I will revisit it. But thank you so much for the questions and for engaging here. Let me go back onto the share. So 1 second here. Okay. All right, back to our slides. So things to consider. As I mentioned early on, it's really not just about the technology. It's everything also around it that's going to make that technology successful. So if you're in the process right now of looking for a CRM system, or you're going through a selection process or considering a selection process, here are some things that you want to consider. Does the CRM support your use cases? Don't just ask the vendor, hey, does your system have volunteer management? Because to them, that just might mean a checkbox on the contact record saying, hey, this person is a volunteer. That's not necessarily what you want. You want to have specific use cases to say, these are the things that we really need the system to do, and have the vendor demo that information or those use cases for you. You don't want to just assume that your assumptions or your interpretations of what volunteer or event management is the same thing that your vendor is thinking. Come to them with very specific use cases. Second and third item here are very important. You want to make sure that if you have any multilingual needs for your system, that those are brought out up front, or any multi-currency needs. So you get donations from all over the world. You want to make, and you need to do currency conversions. These types of things are not going to come up on their own in demos. So if you have any specific needs around this, you're going to want to ask about it and ask specifically what you need, especially for the multilingual. Is it really just the internal forms, or is it the external forms? Is it the admin functions? What needs to support multiple languages and what does not? Back to the data point that we brought up. Will the system support your data volumes without any performance degradation? So I like to be as specific as possible. When you're dealing with vendors, you want to say, here's my number of contacts, here's my number of gifts in my legacy system. I would take it even a step further, perhaps provide them an extract of your data so they are very clear on how it's structured, and that way they can give you an accurate assessment, an accurate estimate of what it will take to move it to the new system. Does the CRM support your current integrations? and what third-party apps would be extra. So let's say, for example, you have an accounting system that's on a 5-year contract and you're implementing your system right now. You have to make sure that accounting system does integrate with your CRM. If it doesn't, we have a problem. And that's surely not a problem you want to cover during testing. So if you have any integrations that need to be supported on day one, you want to make sure all those things are brought out up front. And I also say here what third-party apps would be extra. When you're watching a demo, everything is so pretty and so seamless, it's not always clear, well, what was a third-party app? So you want to make sure that you have a very clear idea on what was core functionality and what was some third-party app that I might need to pay a subscription fee for. That way you have a clear idea on exactly what the total cost is going to be when you implement. You also want to know, when does your current system contract expire? Now, you might be thinking to yourself, oh, I have a great relationship with so-and-so. The account executive is very nice with me. I'm sure that if I have to end my contract early, they're going to be fine with it. Not always the case. Folks never like to see you go, so they don't always make it easy for you. So you want to make sure that you're not necessarily paying for 2 contracts at the same time. And if you are, you just want to be prepared for it. So you want to make sure you know when your contract expires, and so you can plan your project plan accordingly. And this other point here about transferring sustainers, it's a pretty granular point, but I like to raise it. Let's say you have a lot of people who have recurring donations on your current system. If you were going to move to a new system, those recurring donations need to transfer over. And it's a little tricky on how to do it because neither system is going to store actual credit cards. So if this is only a handful of recurring donors, no big deal. You just call them all and get their credit card number and put it in the new system. But if you have hundreds of thousands, you need a process to migrate it. And this process could take months in getting that data from the legacy system. So you want to make sure that you plan for that. Again, I've seen some horror stories of this come up in the later phases of a project and causes projects to get delayed. So always something to think about in advance on how to transition off your current system. I think I've mentioned this point about here, number 7, about which apps are included versus requiring a separate subscription fee. And then number 8, does the system support your programmatic needs? If you have any specific things that you want to track in terms of programs of impact that may be unique to your organization, you want to raise that up front because a lot of even some of the systems I showed you today, they're really focused on fundraising, especially the ones on the left side of that spectrum, and don't give you the ability to customize a whole lot. So if you have specific needs, you want to make sure that you bring it up early on in the process. So those are things to consider while in your CRM selection process. Let's talk a little bit about before you're implementing. So let's say you've made a decision to proceed with Salesforce or with DonorPerfect, and you're about to get started in a week or 2 on your requirements and design sessions and how we're going to configure and customize the system. Here are some things you definitely want to think about in advance. First, you want to revisit your fundraising strategy and draft a fundraising plan because you want to make sure that the system that you build is in line with your strategy, and we build the metrics in place in such a way that you can measure, are you achieving your strategy and are you addressing everything on your plan? If those processes are not in sync, you could find yourself a little aimless at the beginning. So having a clear strategy at the beginning and building your system around that is always ideal. The second point here is to invest some time in rethinking your business processes. So if things are not working out right now in terms of business process, and you move your broken business processes into a new system, you're still not going to find much success. So if something that you're doing is not very efficient, or you think that things could be optimized, let's say in the way you reconcile pledge payments with pledges, or the way you communicate with major gift prospects, whatever it might be, rethink those processes, reevaluate those processes to make sure they're optimized so that when you move to the new system, you're really building around that. The third point, and I mentioned this earlier about data migration, is invest this time in data cleansing and deduplication. So again, if your data is messy, it's dirty, people don't really trust it, and you move that into a brand new shiny system, you really haven't solved anything there, because people will just as easily lose faith in the new system and say, hey, this new system is terrible. So I would strongly encourage investing some time in data cleansing, deduplication, making sure you have the relevant data, only the data that you need to bring over. And this could be an area where you might want to bring on a consultant to help you out, because this could be a very tedious process if you don't have the right tools in place. The fourth and fifth are pretty important as you, begin your discovery sessions, requirements, or design sessions. Bring all your key metrics and reports to the table. Think to yourself, when I log into the system every morning, what do I want to see on my dashboard? What information do I want brought to me? And those are the things that you want to tell your vendor or build in the system, because that's what you want brought to you. You want to be able to see those key metrics and reports. Otherwise, it's going to be very frustrating to feel that you're entering all this stuff in the system, but not seeing the things that you need out of it. If there's certain ways that your leadership or management measures progress, find ways to build those reports and metrics in the system, rather than relying on a spreadsheet or a Word document or what have you. The more that can be brought out of the system, the higher the chances are that the users will adopt to it. Another point here is identifying key must-haves for day one. I often think of gift processors here, and if there's certain X, Y, and Z things that need to be done in order to process a gift, make sure the new system can do X, Y, and Z. Last thing you want to do is roll the system out and find out you can't process a gift the way you need to. So if there's any key must-haves for day one, make sure those are brought front and center, and the system accounts for it in the first phase. The sixth point here is to consider a phased approach. So rather than do the big bang approach and do the whole implementation and integration and data migration all at once, we strongly, strongly recommend a phased approach, the crawl, walk, run approach. I know this seems very obvious, and everybody agrees with this concept, but it's not always the way consulting organizations run. It's more advantageous for consultants to be there for a long time and a lot of resources, and that's not always best for the nonprofit. So I strongly suggest considering a phased approach. Perhaps you focus the very first phase on getting onto the new platform, loading the data, and having really basic configurations. Maybe a second phase turns your flat file integrations into real-time integrations. And maybe your third phase adds on some additional features through different integrations and apps. So however you decide to break it up, it's always a good idea to phase out your implementation, get user feedback after each phase, get folks comfortable with it so that the recommendations and the feedback they give can help you make smarter changes in the subsequent phases. The seventh item here, and this is often overlooked, is having a post-go-live plan ready. Everybody feels happy and relieved once the new system goes live, but this is really, in my opinion, where the real work begins. This is where people have problems. They have feedback. They're wondering when the next round of updates is coming through. So it's always good to have a plan ready, a timeline ready, a team ready to take all those items, take the feedback, and put together a plan for changes to be made for the next update. When users feel that this system is living and it's breathing and it's constantly evolving to our business, it's a higher chance that they're going to be happier with the system and adopt to it. And then the last point here, it's probably the most important one, is investing time in change management from day one. You can't spend months and months implementing a new solution and then just roll it out with a day of training and say, good luck. You really need to engage your users across the organization really from the very beginning. Get their input, get their feedback, have them participate in testing, have them participate in some of the demos to other colleagues. You really want them engaged in the system to the point where when you roll it out, there's no surprises. They know exactly what they're getting, what they're not getting, and how the system is going to help them now and over time. So very few organizations do this well. It's a real science to this. But organizations that really focus on change management from the get-go are the ones that tend to be most successful. And to the question that came up earlier about why do some CRM implementations fail, number 8 is it to me, that change management process is not thought through. Perhaps IT is working with vendors and consultants to build this great system, and then they roll it out to the fundraisers, and the fundraisers are not happy with it. They just kind of like the system that they had before. It wasn't great, but at least they knew how it worked. So I've seen amazing implementations and great technology just get completely derailed by not having that change management plan ready to go. The other area where I've seen projects fail is around number 6, where you create this humongous one-year, multi-million-dollar implementation, and it is so long and it is so complex, and there's so much change all happening at once, to the point that when the year is over, the nonprofit has changed. Their needs are different. And so this is why I strongly recommend that phased approach, to really just get the key things, the low-hanging fruit, the key things that people need for phase one, get feedback, get buy-in, get some the change management issues worked out, and then build on that from there. Having a strong foundation is critical to making the rest of the system work for you. So this really concludes most of what I had here on things to consider, and for both the selection process as well as the implementation process. I'm going to pause again to take a look at any questions that we have. So let me go to the chats in a second. All right. Okay, let me just quickly check here to see if we have any other comments. What is a sustainer? A sustainer is and I apologize for using terminology that may not be clear. Thanks for calling that out. A sustainer is someone who is making a recurring gift that is open-ended. So it's let's say they're signed up for a monthly donation and it's open-ended. There are some limited pledges out there where someone says, I'm making a recurring gift for 12 months. A sustainer is somebody who is making a recurring gift open-ended until they stop. They choose to stop or what have you. So that's a sustainer. Yeah, and good question about Razor's Edge. Does Razor's Edge have a future? Seems like many nonprofits are migrating away from it, even though it's specifically designed for fundraising. I have my own opinions on that. I think, whether it's Razor's Edge, Blackbaud, or whether it's Salesforce, both of these organizations have acquired other organizations to build out their tools. I just think Salesforce has done a slightly better job of gluing things together than Blackbaud has, and that's the kind of feedback that I get from customers as they move away from Razor's Edge and into Salesforce. A lot of the negativity around Salesforce was, hey, it's not really built for nonprofits, but that's actually what I find interesting is, even though some of the innovations that Salesforce comes out with may not be designed for nonprofits, it's also stuff that you can take advantage of. I think sort of looking at things from a purely a nonprofit angle may actually be limiting for Blackbaud, where Salesforce, has all these amazing technologies and features that come out that nonprofits can take advantage of. So I no longer see it as a limitation that Salesforce wasn't originally designed for nonprofits. And that's also what I see and hear from customers as they move from Razor's Edge to Salesforce. Another good question here about which people should be included in the change management at my org. Oh goodness. There are some organizations that have change management consultants or hire change management consultants to lead that, but I would typically recommend a cross-section of people. In general, anytime you put an internal team together for CRM, I recommend a cross-section. So, maybe somebody representing leadership, somebody from programs, somebody from fundraising, and somebody from IT. So whether it's change management or whether it's the CRM implementation team as a whole, having that cross-section of resources where everybody is represented is definitely ideal. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you all for these great questions. And if you think of something later that you remember at that point, please, by all means, send me an email, and I'm happy to share my thoughts. And so this really concludes our presentation here. I will say, though, that all these things to consider, whether it's a selection or whether it's an implementation, for some organizations, this is very simple. This is very straightforward. For others, it's not. And that's where you need some help. And this is where I would really recommend, especially if you're going to go the open platform route in a larger implementation, you want to have a trusted advisor, whether it's a consultant, whether it's a partner. You want to have somebody who can help guide you throughout the process, because it's an ever-changing landscape. And doing all the amazing things that you're doing as nonprofits and focusing on your causes and your mission, it's not always top of mind to be focusing on all these aspects aspects of CRM and technology. So you might find yourself investing a little bit more upfront with a consultant, but overall it's really going to pay off over time. So I definitely encourage you that if you don't have all the expertise in-house to help you along this process, consider a consultant. These are at 1/10, these are things that we help with, whether it's CRM selection, whether it's being your project manager, or your strategist, or actually doing the implementation yourself, or leading the training and change management side of things. These are all services that 1/10 offers, and I encourage you to give us a call and see if we might be a fit to help you out. And if not, we're happy to make a recommendation to somebody who might be. I'll end where I started, with gratitude, and thank you so much for your time. And I encourage you to please follow along or continue to engage with us. Even if you're not ready to make any decisions about CRM, I encourage you to follow us on social media as well as our blog, because we are constantly putting some content out there that might help you think about things, about certain features that I might need or ways to approach a project. Oftentimes we do a feature spotlight where we might take one system and say, hey, here's this really cool feature, and here's our review on it. So please, by all means, follow our blog, follow us on social media, and hopefully there will be some nuggets of information there that will help you along your process. And with that, I would like to thank you all for your time. Have a great rest of your day.